Good. So welcome everybody. Today we have with us Mohammad Akbarpour from Stanford University. He's going to talk about optimal redistribution by income taxation and market design. He's joint work with Paweł Doligalski, Piotr Dworczak, Scott Kominers, who are already here. And we have as guest panelists Lassi, Ahlvik, and Mingshi Kang. So thank you also for coming. And just as a reminder, next week we're going to have Mariam Farboudi from MIT Sloan, who's going to talk about good data and bad data, the welfare effects of price discrimination. So thank you, Mohammad, for joining us today. The floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you so much for inviting me. Julie, Mariam, and I went to the same college and department back there in Iran. I'm glad to be here before her. So this paper that I'm going to basically spend the second half of this talk going through details of it, is joint work with these three wonderful co-authors. In fact, I want to be very clear at the beginning, by any measure of contribution from Shapley value to anything else, my co-authors own a vast majority of this credit. This ordering of names is actually clear because Paweł and Piotr were people who really pushed this paper through, then Scott and then me. So if this was a movie, they wrote the movie and made the movie, and I'm here for a voiceover on the trailer. So let me start. And I'm going to take the liberty, because I was thinking about how to present this, I'm going to take the liberty to really walk you back to the agenda that we started some years ago on redistribution through markets, because really to see why this paper was written, it's really helpful to go back and see where we started thinking about these types of problems. And then I'm going to move into this paper once we are done with that. So really, I mean, we somehow don't get any credits for the specific question we are asking in this agenda. The question is how to allocate the scarce resources. That's probably the first question any economist asks. And a broad answer to this question for the economics profession, the way I learned economics in grad school and undergrad, was that the price system has a built-in selectivity. It has been said that it's really a sophisticated mechanism for matching up like a scarce good to those who need it the most. And it's all being done very automatically by simply giving the consumers to express their preferences in the marketplace. On the other hand, the rationing or any non-market allocation mechanism is really a crude allocation device, something that necessarily gives the good to some people who do not need the good, and some people who want the good cannot get the good. This is, of course, everyone here knows that. I'm not going to bore you more with this. The question that I'm going to tell you who asked this question, really, as far as we know, the first, is what if we are in a world with income inequality, and when we ask the same question? The argument I just told you, is it going to go through, or there are some caveats that we have to think about? And really, the idea here is that price system somehow gives advantage to those with more money. Whereas rationing, despite all its problems, at least ensures that income does not affect who gets the good. This was, to the extent we know, first asked by Marty Weitzman, 1977, and I love this quote of him, which he says, "How can it honestly be said that such a system selects and fulfills real needs when awards are being made as much on the basis of income as anything else?" So this paper, which I would say is the root of this agenda, really asks this question of, do you want to use a pure rationing versus a market mechanism? And even if you don't believe in this philosophical conversation, the reality is that non-market mechanisms are everywhere. So policymakers frequently distort allocation of goods and services in markets. Typically, if you ask them why you are doing this, the motivation is redistribution and fairness. So housing markets in like San Francisco and New York and Amsterdam and pretty much any big city that I know, there is a massive either rent control or public housing. Healthcare in all countries or all developed countries of the world is a single payer system. Of course, America is always an exception. Energy for the Europeans of the crowd, you know that the energy is subsidized. Food is allocated at below market prices for the poor. Pretty much all countries of the world allocated COVID-19 vaccines for free through non-market mechanisms. And whenever you see a traffic, you should tell yourself this is a non-market mechanism. Otherwise, you should have priced the road. By the way, I forgot to say, if you have questions, jump in. And if you ask hard questions, I'm going to refer it to my co-authors who are all here. So I don't want all the questions to just go to the chat. It makes it more conversational if you ask questions with your beautiful voices. So now, coming a little bit forward, of course, the first conventional wisdom against non-market allocation mechanism is the second welfare theorem. You can achieve all Pareto efficient points without distorting the market and by just reallocating endowments. This one is not too hard to say why it's not the best argument against these mechanisms. Second welfare theorem does not account for private information. That's something you will probably learn in a public finance class in session 1 or 2. And this was really the beginning for us to ask the question of how you want to design markets in the presence of inequality and private information. If you didn't have any private information, then you could think about second welfare theorem as a tool, but with private information, second welfare theorem fails, and we ask this question. So what I'm going to do in the next 5 minutes is to walk you through an example that tells you how can you design markets in the presence of inequality and private information, and why actually non-market mechanisms can be valuable. And then we are going to go for the second big criticism to this non-market mechanisms, which brings us to this new paper. All good? Great. It's been ages since I presented on Zoom. The last one was 2 years ago. So it's a new experience again. So here is the example. The best thing about having Piotr in your team is that he is amazing in coming up with gorgeous examples. So this example, which comes from really the first 2 papers we wrote, is an illustration of non-market mechanisms being valuable. So there are 3 agents in this example, Ahmad, Bella, and Elif. There are 2 homogeneous goods I want to allocate. For example, 2 indivisible houses. They are the same type of house. There are 3 people, 2 houses. The resource is scarce. So here is the part that we kind of committed the blasphemy or had an assumption that the first economist that I told them about these assumptions called it blasphemy, the second red point. So agents have different values for the house. The numbers you see, Ahmad 1/4, Bella 3/4, Elif 1. But also they have different marginal values for cash. So Ahmad has lower value for cash than Bella and Elif. This means the willingness to pay of Ahmad is actually pretty high, despite the fact that his value is less than everyone else. The idea here is that if you go and ask Bill Gates how much you're happy to pay to get access to this road, he might say $100,000, I might say $10. That doesn't mean that Bill Gates actually values access to the road more than me, or the social planner gets a higher utility from Bill Gates using the road. That just means Bill Gates doesn't care about cash at all. But we are here, of course, making an interpersonal utility comparison in a sense, and we can spend the rest of this talk making this philosophical discussion. But this is the biggest assumption here. I want to be clear about it, that we are allowing people to have different marginal values for cash. And I want to maximize the sum of utilities. Otherwise, everything is a standard. And so this assumption really comes from a simple observation that as a function of wealth, your utility is concave. Poor people have a very high marginal value for cash. As you grow in wealth, you start having lower and lower marginal value for cash. So to summarize the example, I have 3 agents. The value for the good is 1/4, 3/4, and 1. Value for the cash is 1/8, 1 and 1. And the willingness to pay, I just divide value for the good divided by value for the cash. This is essentially the rate of substitution between cash and the good, are 2, 3/4, and 1. Now, I'm going to take a parenthesis for 30 seconds. This is equivalent to a model, and I'm not going to prove it for you here, but this is equivalent to an otherwise standard model in which, think of a Myersonian setting, the values for the good are exactly willingness to pay, meaning that everyone has the same value for cash. So the willingness to pays are now values for the goods, 2, 3/4, and 1. Everyone has the same value for cash. I have different welfare rates. Okay, for the public finance people of the crowd, this is a probably more familiar, and even for mechanism design people, familiar formulation where you have different welfare rates, but there is no difference in value for the cash. I'm, however, going to continue with this interpretation because we all find it more intuitive that Bill Gates has a lower marginal value for cash and not necessarily higher value, but his willingness to pay is going to be more because of that. Before I jump into analyzing the example, any questions? Just making sure we are on the same page. This example is going to really tell you why non-market mechanisms could be valuable if you design them in an elegant way. Great. So here is mechanism 1. In this resource allocation problem, we're going to use 3 different mechanisms. We are going to analyze 3 different mechanisms. And the first 2 mechanisms are essentially Marty Weitzman's mechanisms. So the first one is market mechanism plus lump sum transfers. I'm going to set the market clearing price, in this case, the market clearing price is 1. I have 2 goods. If I set a price of 1, Ahmad and Elif are happy to buy in the market because their willingness to pay is 2 and 1. So they are happy to go and buy in the market. I will raise $2, and I'm going to redistribute that $2 to all agents as a lump sum transfer. Now you can do very sophisticated math to calculate the utilities of agents. Let me do one of them for you. Ahmad is getting this utility, which is the value for the good for him. Now we are actually looking at the true value for the good minus he's paying 1 to get the good, and then he's getting receiving 2/3 lump sum transfer back. His marginal value for cash is 1/8, so it's going to be minus 1/3 times marginal value for cash, this utility from spending money. That will give you this number. You can do for the rest. If you do the utilitarian perspective, you will see that I know, Angel, you told me not to look at the chat, but it's very distracting when a new chat comes, but continue asking questions in chat. This is the total utility. Mechanism 2 is a random allocation
Mohammad,
mechanism.
just for clarification. So in the previous example, Bella gets 2/3 because you're counting the money she didn't spend, right?
It's 2/3 because of the lump sum transfer.
Or lump sum transfer.
Yeah, it's exactly. And the marginal value for cash for her is 1, so the net utility is 2/3 times 1. Yeah, and Elif is getting a utility 1 from the good. She's paying $1 for it, and then she's receiving 2/3 back. So her utility is 1 minus 1/3 times 1, which is 2/3. Great. So here is now second Weitzman mechanism, if you like, random allocation. The question Marty asked was really, is random allocation better than the market mechanism? So if I do pure random allocation at a price of 0, everyone is going to get the good with probability 2/3. I have 2 goods and 3 agents. Lump sum transfer is 0. You can do the math. These would be the utilities. Essentially, no one is paying anything, so everyone gets 2/3 times value of the good. That would be the total utility. And the interesting observation here is that the total utility is lower. Remember, the market allocation total utility was 37. In random allocation, total utility is 32. And in fact, it's not just the utilitarian thing. Every single agent is worse off. Okay. So this is a wonderful result for market mechanism. Let's not distort the markets. Now here is when really mechanism design can come in. This question of market versus pure random allocation is really pre-Meyerson. Once we started developing tools for mechanism design, we can actually start thinking about all sorts of hybrid mechanisms. What if we have a price that is not zero, but something else? What if we allocate one of the goods with lottery and one of the goods with the market, and all these sorts of hybrid mechanisms can be part of your toolbox? And here is the smart lottery, if you like. So the first good is going to be allocated with the lottery at a price of 0. The second good is going to be allocated in the market. So I'm going to set the price of 1 for one of the goods, 0 for the other good. Ahmad is going to come to the market. Now agents can choose. Do I want to get the good for sure in the market, or I want to go to the lottery and participate in the lottery? Ahmad is going to participate in go to the market and buy the good at a price of 1 in the market. He gets the good. The other 2 agents are going to actually go to the lottery and get the good with probability half. And these prices are designed in a way that these agents are choosing their best. Basically, they're maximizing their personal utility by choosing market versus lottery respectively. I raised $1 this time because only one person bought the good at the price of 1, and I'm going to redistribute all of that as a lump sum transfer. If you do the math on utilities now, you will get these numbers, and I'm going to bring all of them together in one table for you in a second. The first point is that the total utility is the highest. And this is doing better than the market and better than the random allocation. If I bring all of them into one table, you will see that these 3 agents who had these different values for cash and these different willingness to pays get a utility of 5, 16, 16 in the market, 4, 17, 17 in the rationing, and I don't know why I don't have the yeah, this is actually the smart rationing. Forget the pure lottery, because that was everyone was worse off in that one. So this is the market utility. This is the smart rationing. We just did this one, the first good in lottery and second good lottery. What's happening here is that I'm reducing the utility of Ahmad, the rich person, if you like, the person who had the lowest value for cash, and increasing the utility of the other 2 agents. Okay, so this mechanism that we designed, which distorts the market, instead of setting the price that market clears, said, hey, I'm going to sell 1 good at the market, 2 goods in the lottery, essentially, is hurting Ahmad and is helping Bella and Elif. So this is a redistribution through market in this sense. What's happening? The value for cash is negatively correlated with willingness to pay. The lower the value for cash, the higher the Bill Gates of the world, the higher the willingness to pay. As a result of that, market behavior, essentially, do you choose to pay and get the good for sure, or you go to the lottery, is a screening mechanism. I can use that to select for people who are richer, and they're going to go to the market and get the good for sure. And this is not uncommon. You can get the Broadway show tickets for $800 or go and wait in the queue at 6 a.m. in the morning and get it for a lower price. And this is essentially a screening mechanism. And the designer can increase the utility of agents with higher value for money, the poor people, by reducing the price of the rationed option and giving them the option to get this quote-unquote damaged good. Okay, so that's really what's happening in the example. I'm going to pause and see if you have questions, because this is really the core of why non-market mechanisms can be valuable. Great.
Can I ask Kang a question in a bit of a different way? He's in the chat, so I'll ask it loud. So typically in the Milesian tradition, we carry around this curvature in utility, and then it's all complicated. We have not many results, ugly formulas. You guys get away from all of that by keeping the linear structure, but different weights, which makes me think that, for example, for buying products that don't affect your budget constraint at large, that is probably particularly accurate. But for things like labor market or housing, it might be a little bit less so.
Yeah, this is, I'm going to refer these questions to my co-authors as well, but basically you're saying we don't, so the mechanism design setting doesn't admit income effects. That's essentially, I think, your point. Correct me if I'm wrong. Meyerson setting has two implicit assumptions in it. Meyerson says utilities are V minus P. One assumption is there are no income effects. Essentially, the payments in the market is going to change your marginal value for cash, Paolo. The other one is everyone has the same marginal value for cash. We are in a world of fully transferable utilities. What's happening here is that essentially these papers are dropping the first assumption, keeping the first assumption, meaning that your utility for money is not changing in the market. As in this sense, it's a small market, but different people could have different. And what you can see is that essentially the tractability comes from the first one, not the second one. I mean, Piotr, Scott, Paweł, if you want to add something, go ahead.
So let me just add something. So when we come to the second part of the talk, when we talk about the actual paper I contributed somehow to, some results are extendable to the model where we have curvature in utility. So we have the first part of the talk is general utility can have curvature, but this is not about the market design really. It's rather the other results, like saying when you don't want to use it. But when you want to use the market design, we have some results that show that those, at least some of those effects are robust to introducing curvature to utility. The cause, of course, is that we don't describe the optimal mechanism in detail. We just describe them qualitatively. But qualitative, the message is exactly the same when we use constant marginal utility and a concave utility for money.
Great. There are no more questions. I'm going to.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why do you, what's the function of the lump sum taxation and redistribution? And why do you use a additive social welfare function?
Oh, these are the first one is basically we are giving the market mechanism. The lump sum is really coming because we are giving the market. I mean, there are different ways to think about it. One of them is we are giving the market mechanism even more power because the money you're raising, the government is not getting to spend it something else. It's increasing the utility of the agents by giving them back the lump sum. And we can talk about the incentive implications of that. The additive is just an assumption we wanted to do utilitarian. I mean, we could think about, and it's not additive, it's additive with welfare weights. You can capture that too. But we don't have any, basically this additiveness with welfare weights is going to be crucial, even for the next part of the talk that I'm going to talk about. And I don't know if we want to add something, my co-authors, feel free. That's really an assumption on the objective function, which is with sum of utilities with a welfare weight. I don't know how to answer the why question. It's an assumption. Perfect. So on that note, let me jump into the new paper. So, which is here. So we really wrote a bunch of papers on this agenda. With Piotr and Scott. The first one was a two-sided market. The second one was a one-sided market motivated by empirical applications. There were a lot of different heterogeneities in the market, like heterogeneous quality of goods and so on and so forth. And this one, the third one, was a specific paper written for the allocation of COVID-19 vaccines. Eric Budish joined us in that paper. All of this paper take the income taxation of the society as given. So inequality is a constraint to all of these models. So people have a distribution of marginal value for cash, and you cannot touch that. And of course, a big question that we were asked was, what if income taxation is also a tool? What if you don't have this assumption and people can actually, the designer has access to income taxation as well? And that was the point that we needed this brilliant economist. I'm so happy that Paweł joined us to basically read this, to write this new paper. Before telling you about this new paper, let me tell you there is a massive literature related to these topics that I'm talking about. In fact, Mingshi, who is here, is a big contributor to this redistribution through markets literature. There are in particular these 4 papers that are related to the paper I'm going to talk about by Zhang, Pioneers Track, Bierbauer, and Ahlvik, Lassi, and Makimatila. Lassi is actually here too. So I will talk more about the connections of this paper, but really these papers study the problem of like optimal regulation of consumption goods when some of them, like when there are externalities or not. This last paper in particular allows for joint design of income tax and consumption tax. And I'm going to talk about the connection when I present our results. The big difference is really much more tools for income taxation in Lassi's paper and much more tools for distorting the goods market in our paper. In this sense, the papers are complementary. So on that note, I'm going to tell you that this paper really starts from the second challenge to this whole redistribution agenda, which is Atkinson-Stiglitz result. The Atkinson-Stiglitz result says redistribution should be done entirely via income taxation. That's the result of that paper. So is it the case that all these non-market mechanisms, one example of which I just showed you, is really redundant? And where we are going from here is to show that one big assumption of Atkinson-Stiglitz, which is that the only heterogeneity in population is in ability to generate income, is going to be crucial for this result. And if that's not the case, then there is actually a lot of space for redistribution through markets. So the 2 questions we are going to ask in this paper is first, should markets be optimally distorted when there is also heterogeneity in taste for goods? I mean, when there is no heterogeneity in taste for goods and the only heterogeneity is the ability to produce income, we know you don't want to distort the markets from Atkinson-Stiglitz. And the second question is, if yes, what is the interaction between this inequality aware market design and income taxation? Basically, when you want to and how you want to distort markets. So there are 2 main results. Again, Paweł, Piotr, and Scott are the big contributors to these results. The 2 results we are going to discuss. I think result 1 we will get to in more details, and result 2 in today's talk. The first one says, and before getting in, really the one reason this problem has been studied, but the reason it has not been studied widely is that once you add a second dimension of heterogeneity, namely tastes, you are having a multi-dimensional mechanism design problem. And multi-dimensional mechanism design is just like mechanism designers know, it's a no-go zone. It's a really, really hard problem. So if you add this second dimension of heterogeneity, then result 1 says with separable utility functions, if 3 assumptions hold, the Atkinson-Stiglitz result still holds. So essentially, philosophically, what's happening is that you have the Atkinson-Stiglitz model and results. You take one of their assumptions, which is everyone has the exact same taste. You bring heterogeneity to that taste. Different people have different taste for the goods. And then you ask, in this richer model, in this multi-dimensional model, can I still recover Atkinson-Stiglitz result? Okay, so that's what's happening here. And the three assumptions are like not like, I'm not going to defend them. They are not like easy assumptions to satisfy. The first one is taste type does not affect the marginal utility of the income. Okay, so your taste is not going to affect your marginal value for essentially cash. This is true if your utility of consumption of a numeraire is exactly equal. Basically, if there are no income effects. The second result is that the welfare weight on how much I care about allocating the good to Mingshi is only depends on the ability type. It does not depend on the taste. Basically, taste does not give you anything about the welfare weight. And the last one, which is again a strong assumption, is that these two, taste type and ability type, are statistically independent. So if I know your ability, I don't know anything about your taste, and vice versa. If these three assumptions hold, and I'm going to show you what do they mean mathematically, then the conclusions of the Atkinson-Stiglitz hold. Again, you don't want to distort the markets. So all the example I just showed you is redundant. Result two, or results two, essentially say, if you drop any of those three assumptions, 1, 2, or 3, then distortions in markets become optimal. And if you simplify the model further than what Atkinson and Stiglitz have, then you can actually provide analytical solutions. The model should be a linear model with two goods, binary ability type and continuous taste. So this is as much we could do with multi-dimensional mechanism design. And distortions in markets are quote unquote generically optimal, meaning that you want to do them. And there are broad range of parameters that market distortions of the types I just presented could be optimal. So this is the general path we are going. If there are questions or discussion points, we can talk. Otherwise, I'm going to jump into the model. Great. So here is a model. You have a unit mass of agents characterized by two types, T and A. T is the taste and A is the ability. And we will see how they enter the utility function in a bit. The social planner allocates a vector of goods. There are L different goods in society. It's essentially generalization of Atkinson-Stiglitz. We are writing down, not exactly, but essentially the numeraire consumption good C, and there are earnings that I'm going to denote by Z, and this Z is the pre-tax. So the way these enter agents utility is that for an agent with type T and A, taste T for the good and ability A, if they consume goods X vector and the numeraire good C and earnings are Z, their utility is in this sense additively separable. There is a utility function for C, there is a value, a different utility function for the goods that depends on the taste. And this is heterogeneous. This is the new piece relative to the classic model, minus this utility from producing income that depends on your ability. So the higher ability agents, once I simplify the model, we are going to simplify the model. This is going to be, for example, 1 over A times C. So essentially, the higher your ability, the lower your utility from producing income. And again, for those of you like me who have not taken a public finance class in grad school, this is the dimension of heterogeneity. Let me actually bring a color. This is the dimension of heterogeneity that exists in the classic model. And this is the dimension of heterogeneity that does not exist in the classic model. So, and all these are increasing functions. Great. So you can produce the good X at a fixed marginal cost K. There is a vector. Each one of them has a marginal cost. And there's a joint distribution for the basically taste and ability. We are not imposing any assumptions at this point. And the planner has a social welfare weight that depends on both taste and on ability. With the average welfare weight normalized to 1. I mean, if you observed agents' types, you know what is their welfare weight, but you don't observe their type. So that makes the problem interesting. To close the model, the planner's objective function is to maximize, and this goes to, forgot who asked the question about the objective function. Mehdi asked it actually. This is again, as you can see, like a linear sum essentially for each agent whose utility is this function, which is actually here, this utility for the agents. I'm going to multiply that utility with their welfare weight, take the integral for the whole society. I care about the weighted sum of utilities.
Sorry, Mohammad, can I ask on that?
Yeah.
So in some sense, there's double counting of the utilities because there's both the concave utility function and the welfare weights. So agents are different because they have different income, I guess, and they have concave utility. And on top, the planner may give them different exogenous welfare weights. Is that how it works?
Yeah, it's actually interesting you call it double counting.
I guess in some basic Merlish, when I took the public economics class, it used to be only the U. And I mean, this is fine. It's more general. But my question is, so one way you break this Atkinson-Stiglitz is your mechanism 1, where you have the income effects. And I haven't seen any other papers making that point. But is it coming from the fact that people didn't normally have both the welfare weights and the concave utility function in the same model, and you are the first ones to put them together? Or sort of what is your intuition on how you're getting this super interesting new result?
It's actually, I'm going to refer it to Paweł because it's a very literature, like public finance literature oriented question.
All right, so I'm gonna take it over. So in the standard model, you have only the ability differences between people. You can add income effects, you can add nonlinear utility, and you can have also like social welfare weights, which depend on ability, and the Atkinson-Stiglitz will still hold. So here, what really changes is that we have T, the additional dimension, and when what we call the marginal utility of disposable income, so that's an object that will not vary with T if all our assumption 1 is satisfied, but in general could vary. If this varies with T, then this essentially creates additional reason to redistribute conditional on your level of income. So conditional level of income, there will be different people with different tastes who are different. You can call it even a different marginal social welfare weight. And that's why the planner actually would like to intervene in the goods market. So you can generate it by breaking quasi-linearity. We have quasi-linearity, which gives rise to assumption 1 being satisfied here. But like we have also extension of the model where we don't define numeraire, and then we show that actually this is slightly general. You can have some income effects without breaking this assumption, but still a sort of a knife edge assumption. It's a relatively hard assumption to satisfy in general. Hope this helps a little bit.
And if I may, sorry, I haven't. Go ahead.
Sorry. And so just to clarify, so if lambda is equal to 1 for everybody, but you still have the income effect or the concave utility function, would it be back to Atkinson-Stiglitz?
No, it would because it would violate assumption 1.
So I wanted to add that this sort of what we call double counting of this is actually quite common. So if you look at Mirrlees or Diamond-Mirrlees, these papers from the 70s, they all have that feature that you have curvature in the individual utilities and then curvature in the social welfare function. We don't actually have curvature in the social welfare function. We just have constant welfare weights. But if you look at these all papers with curvature, there is the double curvature, one in the social planner's objective or welfare function and one individual utility. So this is not new and it's not driving the results.
Right. Thank you. Thanks.
So I have another two questions. So the first one is that to solve the problem, do you need the positive correlation between T and A? And the second one is that does individual has individual rationality constraint in the sense that they can only spend what they have earned, so which is the, I guess, the variable here.
The answer to the first one is, I don't know what solving the problem mean. I'm going to actually show you a theorem in which T and A are not actually correlated. In fact, that's the condition you need for the result to hold. And then we are going to drop, if I show you the result, you will see actually, you don't necessarily, you could have no correlation between the two. In fact, they are statistically independent and get a very closed form solution if you just drop the assumption one, which is the dependence of taste and marginal value for cash. So what was the second one?
Do you have an individual IR constraint?
Oh, no,
in the sense...
there are no, I actually didn't talk about that. There is an incentive compatibility constraint here and a resource constraint, which says the total resource that the social planner is spending should have a lower bound. This is, you could call it a government budget, whatever. But there is no participation constraint. So this is, yeah, there is no participation constraint. I mean, if the planner in our framework wanted to maximize revenue, then you need the participation constraint to make the problem well defined. Otherwise, I mean, like you can just get money from people as much as you like. But here there is no participation constraint, and that's actually important.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, recovering Atkinson-Stiglitz. Here is the theorem, the first theorem. There are three assumptions we advertised that they're gonna come. The first one is taste does not affect the marginal utility of income. If the U function that was in the utility of the agent is just a linear function, you get that. The welfare weights depend only on the ability type. So this is basically saying that this is only a function of ability for all types of agents, and ability and taste are statistically independent. This distribution function can be just written as the sum, as the multiple of these two functions for all types. So if these three assumptions, and you can make your own judgments whether these are like reasonable assumptions or strong assumptions, if all these three hold, then essentially you recover the Atkinson-Stiglitz result, meaning that any optimal mechanism induces an efficient choice of goods by pricing them at the marginal cost, and it can be implemented with an income tax alone. Okay, so
if I may come back quickly to Lassi's question, so you can sort of see that both assumption 1 and 2 are important precisely because of this sort of double counting. Assumption 1 is ruling out differences in marginal utilities of income, essentially. And then assumption 2 is saying also in the welfare weights, we don't give a preference to particular taste types, right? So this is a manifestation of what you pointed out.
Yeah, great, thanks. Thanks.
great. So just because I know a lot of you are not public finance people, Paweł and Piotr are experts, but for me to really put it in the big picture of what's happening here, there is the Atkinson-Stiglitz result. You come and generalize it to multidimensional types. And then you ask the question, can I recover Atkinson-Stiglitz? And you show that these three assumptions, if they hold, even with multidimensional types, you will still get that result. So how can you, just a big picture of how can you prove this result? I mean, we're not gonna go to details of it maybe in the last 15 minutes, but really there are two steps for this proof. The first one is to consider a relaxed problem, which is the problem in which T is actually observed, the taste. Okay, so that makes the problem simpler. because I can now go and solve this problem for every taste type, ignoring agents' incentives to misreport. Okay, now this is familiar for mechanism design people of the crowd. So for each T, the relaxed problem becomes a one-dimensional optimal taxation problem in which agents basically have exactly identical consumption tastes. So the original Atkinson-Stiglitz theorem implies that for a given taste, if I look at only agents of one taste, goods should be undistorted and redistribution should be only through income taxation. That's like the Atkinson-Stiglitz result that says if you focus on one T, you have one-dimensional problem, Atkinson-Stiglitz holds. The second step is to show that the three assumptions imply that the income tax schedule that solves the problem for each T is independent of T. Okay, so the first step is to solve the problem for each level of taste. Because of Atkinson-Stiglitz, we know you don't want to distort markets, but that solution is actually independent of T. So it's feasible in the original problem, even if you do not observe T's, because the solution you offered was not dependent on T to begin with. So it's actually feasible for the broader problem as well. Okay, so that's really the big picture of the way you go. But the key step, of course, I kind of cheated, because the key step to show is to show that this solution is independent of T because of the three assumptions. Okay, so that's that the planner does not condition welfare weights on T directly, and this is assumption 2. And because of that, and also because the planner does not learn about distribution of ability from T, these two together will give you the fact that the solution to this like relaxed problem does not depend on T. So that's a very big picture view of this proof or this result. And then with that, we can actually move to the question of, I think we will get to one of them, which is basically dropping one of the assumptions. Again, okay, so before restating that theorem, in order to actually get closed form analytical solutions, we are going to simplify the model in a heroic way, but this is a multi-dimensional mechanism design. We have to do something to be able to solve it. So we are going to assume there is the X good, which was a vector of L dimension, is now one indivisible good that you can get a probability of it. Equivalently, you can interpret this as a divisible good with different levels of quality. Earnings also are in some interval. Now, the big assumption here is that there are two types of abilities, low and high. The low ability agents, the A is essentially 0, meaning that it's very, very hard for them to produce income. High ability agents have this parameter more than 1. And the planner puts a higher welfare weight on low ability agents than high ability agents. Okay, so think of these people as people who essentially cannot work, and these people as people who can actually work and produce income. We are going to assume that this is linear in this simplified form. So there is a utility function. There is of the numeraire plus T times X minus this simple form for producing income, this utility function. And obviously, if AL is very low, this term explodes, which means the low ability agents are really not going to be able to work in equilibrium. Now, here is where we are going to break one of the assumptions, namely the assumption 1. Instead of assuming essentially a linear utility function, we are going to assume that the utility function has this form. There is a subsistence level below which your utility is minus infinity, above which the utility is is a linear function. There are a bunch of parametric assumptions that we need for the model to make sure this subsistence level is binding, but I'm not gonna bother you with them in the next. 10 minutes we have. So this is essentially the utility function, which you can see it's essentially concave, and hence you have some sort of income effect. And as Paweł was saying, the result you are going to see holds for any concave utility function. It's just about, can you come up with clear, like beautiful, simple, closed form solution that you can interpret. And this helps with that. Otherwise, do any concave utility and the main intuition goes through.
Can I ask really quickly about this? So this is with respect to the other consumption C, but I guess when you talk about housing or electricity or those type of goods, we could also have this concave utility with respect to, what was the other good again? X, that you have this taste T for. So did you ever consider that, or does it really matter for the model as much as this one? So
you're saying that
consume a minimum amount of X in order to stay alive. You need housing, or you need food, or something else.
Basically changing this assumption to a nonlinear or concave assumption, right?
Just curious if you ever thought about.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, we don't have it in this paper.
We do have it in the paper actually. So there's an extension, but it's very, very deep in the online. Maybe Paweł should talk about it.
Sorry for missing that.
No, like we actually we missed it now. This is, Paweł talked about this, that we have this extension where if you put curvature on these things, then qualitatively we can prove that distortions go in certain directions. We just don't get the closed form solution. Maybe Paweł wants to expand on this. I don't know.
But what about Atkinson-Stiglitz? Is it back, or?
We did not assume linearity for Atkinson-Stiglitz, right? So for Atkinson-Stiglitz, this was general.
Okay.
It could have all kinds of curvature there. Yeah.
Thanks.
Great. So on that note, here is the theorem we saw. Suppose takes basically these three assumptions. If you drop the first assumption, then you're dropping the conclusion, because conclusion needed that assumption. So here is the result, which says that there are some regularity conditions that we need, but under those regularity conditions, then there exists an optimal mechanism that can be implemented in the following way. So income is taxed at the essentially highest possible rate for high ability agents. High ability agents are going to work, but low ability agents are not going to work in this basically mechanism. And then there are two levels of quality of the good that you can offer, or interpreting in the similar to the example I opened at the beginning, two different probabilities that you can get the indivisible good at. One of them is a low quality or low probability of the good at a price that is below the marginal cost. And then the other one is a high quality or high probability of getting this good at a price that is higher than the low price. And it's higher than the marginal cost too. It's between the marginal cost K and the optimal monopoly price. And then you will give everyone, okay, this should be C lower bar. You give everyone a lump sum transfer of the subsistence level plus this PL times XL. PL is the price of this low quality good. XL is the quality of the good. So you give everyone this lump sum transfer. What does this mean? This means that low ability agents who do not work, they have a very high cost of working essentially, they get this lump sum transfer, they use this part of the lump sum transfer, the second term, to go and buy this low quality good in the market, and then they will have a subsistence level left for them so that their utility doesn't go below that, which is minus infinity. So this is similar in terms of the taste flavor of what's happening to those like market distortions we were talking. You offer a good of low quality at a low price, high quality at high price, and agents are going to select. High ability agents are going to go to this one for this one, low ability agents low ability agents can only afford that one with the lump sum transfer. Now, because this lump sum payment is equal to this number, it's subsistence level plus PL times XL, which is the total price of the subsidized good. I have this subsidized good here. This optimal mechanism, you can actually decentralize it. You can just let agents choose between receiving the good with quality, essentially QL, and in-kind redistribution, or opting for a higher cash transfer together with a flat commodity tax that they get. So this is essentially decentralizable, if you like. So here is essentially what's happening. Income tax extracts all the surplus from high ability agents, but it's not distortionary. What's happening is that low ability agents who are not working, but they have high enough taste. Low ability agents who don't have high enough taste are not going to get the good, but low ability, and they just get this total cash, but low ability agents with high enough taste can now go and get a subsidized low quality good. So if you want to get an illustration, and I find this example helpful to think about it, really think of an example in which the good is treatment for a medical condition. The taste type is capturing whether and to what extent the treatment is needed. When the cost of treatment is really high, then low-income agents are constrained by the subsistence level. They cannot go below that. So they can afford at most a very low quality treatment, while some of them have very high marginal utility for the treatment quality. So you will have these people who have very low income, they have low ability agents, they can't work, but they have massively high tastes. So even if the designer has no inherent preference for redistribution to agents who are sick, like I don't care about sick people per se, so taste does not really enter my welfare weight. This is assumption 2 that we are still holding. And the probability of getting sick is independent of your ability. Assumption 3, these two are independent. You still want to redistribute towards agents who consume low quality because there are some of them who have very high value for the good and they have low disposable income, so you can actually give them the chance to get the good at lower price by subsidizing that good. Okay, and this force doesn't exist in the original Atkinson-Stiglitz model. If I want to summarize all of that, it's that the mechanism subsidizes the consumption of the low quality good because choosing that low quality good is a signal of high marginal value for cash. Okay, so that is the same intuition that we talked about at the beginning, but it comes in even in a model that you can actually tax income and people can choose how much to work and all of that because of this second dimension of heterogeneity. I'm going to pause here and see if my wonderful co-authors are going to add something to this intuition. I mean, let me actually go here. As Paweł was saying, this goes through even under concave view, and the intuition is the same. You just don't get the closed form results, which is essentially the buying the good implies higher marginal utility of income relative to agents who do not buy. As a result, the planner can endogenously value giving more money to agents who buy the good, and you can get welfare improvement by subsidizing the purchase of the good for qualities consumed by low ability agents. This is, again, that example. If you remember, I sell one good at a low price in the lottery. So I reduce the quality of the good. It's now 50% chance you get the good, but the price is much lower and I can screen. Now, we can't get to dropping assumptions 2 and 3, so let me jump into a summary slide. So there are two conventional wisdoms. One of them is that the second welfare theorem means you don't want to distort the markets. That one is easy to debunk because it fails with private information. And then redistributions of non-market allocation mechanisms become actually optimal. The conventional wisdom 2 is that Kinson-Stiglitz result, which is what we all learn as optimal taxation is enough for redistribution, it fails with multidimensional heterogeneity. To be clear, we are not the first to show that this happens. There is a literature around that. We are basically trying to make it cleaner and state these assumptions that you need to recover the results and use mechanism design to analyze. So this all says non-market allocation mechanisms can sometimes be optimal, even if you have access to income taxation. And the last word, I'm a fan of, I have a cocktail menu. Last word is my favorite cocktail, so I'm using the last word as a conclusion. This is not to say that all market interventions motivated by redistributive motives are justified. Do not go and call Mohammad and Piotr and Paweł and Scott communists. This is to say that the traditional theoretical foundations that we have opposing good market distortions are insufficient. This is a new agenda. More research is needed. Thank you again, everyone, and thanks to my fantastic co-authors for being here and answering the hard questions.
So thank you very much, Mohammad, for your excellent talk. We now open the possibility of questions and final comments. So as it is customary, I'm going to give the first opportunity to talk to the panelists. So Mingshi, for instance, would you like to make any final question, comment?
Yes, I have a question regarding this non-distortionary tax, like in the previous lemma. So this non-distortionary full extraction non-distortionary income tax, is it driven by the assumption that there's only two types? So it's low types and high types. So you only need to set the income tax to the level that the high type is just indifferent. So if you change to another, I don't know, type space of continuous ability, does that result still hold?
I have to, let me actually, I think we don't need the slides here. Perfect. I think I have to also repeat, it was such a fantastic joy to work with Paweł on this. It is amazing. I wish you were at the Stanford, Paweł, as my colleague. I will refer this question to you after this compliment.
Thank you. So for the compliment, and Mingshi, you're entirely right. So if we don't have two types, we would have some distortions there.
Yeah.
But you still have the, yeah, but you're still going to have the, I don't know, the similar result. It's just that like the tax is no longer full extraction.
Yeah, we believe so. So if I may add a bit of context to that, I mean, it's for tractability essentially again, but we think that this makes the results stronger because it shows that even if you have the best case scenario for income taxation, it's best case scenario because it's fully redistributive without being distortionary, even then you benefit from adding these distortions in the goods market. So the idea would be if in a richer model, you would also have distortions in the labor market. So we would have potentially an additional motive for goods market distortions to kind of offset the distortions in the labor market. So even without that force, which is turned off in our simple framework, you still have a role for those interventions in the goods market. So we kind of think this actually makes the results stronger, but the model with more ability is, we know it's not tractable. We've tried numerically, we can do it numerically. The mechanism is very complicated.
I see, that makes sense. Thank you.
Good. So Lassi, any final question or remark?
Yeah, so this is great paper, really clever way with the two-type ability distribution to get rid of the complexities. I like that a lot. So one thing this whole thing opens up to is that what is the optimal mechanism? Okay, you can have rationing, but then I guess what is new here is the income-dependent prices that you give the high income and the low income people different prices, this PH, PL. So I was a little bit unsure can you implement the mechanism by offering a menu to everybody, or do you need to make it conditional on people's income to prevent the high type from picking the low type? Between these two different propositions that you have in the paper. So that was the only thing I was a little bit unsure about.
You mean for this result that I just presented, or?
Yeah, there is that, and then there's the when you break up the other.
This result is this is a very you can offer the menu to everyone and people choose basically between buying the good at the lower price or not buying the good for low taste, low ability agents or high ability agents.
Right.
I think Lassi is asking about the different result. Right? Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I think Lassi asked about the result you did not present today, right? Just to clarify.
Yeah, exactly. So is it a bit different in the other? Sorry to talk about something we didn't present, but I'm just curious about that. There is another result in the paper where you break the other assumptions, and then you have the PH, PL again, these different prices. And my interpretation is there you actually need to condition on people's incomes, and you just can't offer them a menu, which then changes the interpretation. Instead of offering one menu to everybody, you ask people's income when they come to you, and then you give them different prices. Is that right?
I'm happy to take it, Mohammad, if it's okay.
Yeah,
you're absolutely right. So in the current result that Mohammad did present, you have this separability that the income tax and the goods markets can be designed separately. And whether you high, low ability, whatever your income is, you face the same price schedule, nonlinear price schedule in the market. Now, this we didn't see today, but when we relax the other assumptions, but you have the quasi-linearity in the numeraire, a different type of mechanism can arise when, in fact, prices in the market are income dependent. And so there's still a self-selection, but you kind of bundle together the design of the income tax with the goods market. So you have the choice. You either work, you generate income, and then you face higher prices for the good, or you don't work, you have no income, and then you have a subsidized option available to you, which is like a means-tested subsidy, like a public housing program that is means-tested. And what we show in actually a new version of the paper, which we're going to post hopefully today, so I encourage everyone to look at the new version, is there's a very simple trade-off there, which is that you can make the income tax maximally redistributive, which is what happened in the result Mohammad presented. That leaves no slack in the AC constraints, so you can no longer offer different prices to the two ability agents in the market. Sometimes it's optimal, but sometimes what you want to do is you want to reduce the redistributiveness of the income tax. You make it less progressive. That gives you a bit of slack in the AC constraint, and then you can actually use that slack to give a better price in the market to the low ability agents, and it's implemented exactly by having income dependent prices. So both could be optimal, and which one is optimal depends roughly on how much you care about redistribution across the ability distribution. If you care a lot about it, you're just going to go for the maximally redistributive income tax, and then you will have income independent prices. But if you don't care as much about that redistribution across ability, then you might reduce the progressivity of the income tax and have these income dependent prices. But essentially use income as a label for price discrimination, third-degree price discrimination in the market.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This seems like a very big thing. Like, do you want to condition on income, or do you just give them the menu for the policymakers? So, thanks.
Yeah, and this is what happens in your paper as well, I believe, right? Is that this is kind of also the highlight of your paper, is that you might want to condition on income when you regulate these goods producing externalities. It's just also that I think in your paper has much more implications, if I understand correctly, about the income tax itself, because you have a much richer model of the income tax. And the whole shape of the income tax could also depend on your consumption, which is something we don't have because we kind of shut down the richness of the income tax is reduced by the binary ability assumption in a sense. So it's a very simple.
We can't really offer a menu in our paper, but you actually have the choice of giving them a menu versus making it conditioned on income. So
actually, on that note that Piotr just made, I invite everyone to read Lassi's paper too. It's called Pigouvian income taxation. It's actually a multi-dimensional screening problem too, but there are more tools in income taxation and a much simpler goods market. We are in the reverse, and we use different techniques, but that paper is very complementary, and it shows the trade-offs that exist in simplifying the models.
Thank you. So I think there is a question in the chat. No, I mean, Mehdi Seinodin, maybe you kind of mute yourself and address the speaker directly.
Hi again. So I was just asking, this new version of the mechanism, the final version, without the last two assumptions, I just want to ask, how is that incentive compatible? How do you get people to reveal their income? And then just finally, what would the actual policy application be how would you?
I didn't get the one that I presented or the one that Piotr discussed. If it's the one I presented, I can take it. If the one that Piotr discussed, I will let Piotr continue. Which one was your question, mate?
The final one where you condition on income. I don't understand how people reveal. Why do people reveal their income?
Oh God! So the one that Piotr was discussing, Piotr.
Or maybe,
discussed.
yeah. Income is observed in this model, right? This is the short answer. But you have incentive compatibility because even with income-dependent prices, because you reduce the income tax. So the high ability agents get a strictly positive surplus from working. So if they mimic the low ability agents, yes, they would get a better price in the market, but they would also lose the surplus from working. So that's why you get incentive compatibility. But income is observed. So they cannot work, get high income, and then pretend that they have low income. That's not something that's in the model. So the only way to mimic the low ability agents is to actually have no income. And they don't want to do it because when the income tax is relatively low, they do get a positive, strictly positive surplus from working. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I got it. Thank you. Would you say the closest real thing to your model would be sort of like England in that there's a good NHS and then a good private sector health care system with different prices? Would that be roughly what you're trying to advise?
I mean, and this is one of the questions that I'm sure every co-author has a different perspective. But yes, I would like think of even a public, like, I don't know, for me, I live near San Francisco. Like there is a market for housing. There is also rent control houses that the government, essentially the mayor of San Francisco, forces at below market prices. So you could think of that as, which is similar to the story we're saying. So it is saying that you want to have a price that basically want to scream. So you cannot set all the housing market of San Francisco at below market prices. You want to have prices at which rich people go and select that one, and then you can help poor people at below market prices. That's my interpretation of this, but I'm sure this one. I invite everyone else to comment on Scott, Paweł, and Piotr if they want to add.
Well, Paweł is in the UK. Maybe he can tell us if it's a good match between the model and UK.
So I would say like it's a perfect match for our model because NHS is particularly low quality health insurance. But yeah, I think this is actually a very good example. Yeah. So you can get subsidized lower quality good in the from the government, and then if you want more, you can buy it on the market. So that matches very well.
And it says a lot that academics in the UK